What is up, fight fans? It is International Fight Week, and that means it's time to give you my breakdown and predictions for the main card of this International Fight Week event, UFC 317. Ilia Topuria versus Charles do Bronx Oliveira, lightweight title on the line, and for the first time in 3 years, there is going to be a newly crowned lightweight champion not named Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev leaving could be an open lane for Charles Oliveira to get the belt back, but Oliveira's got a dangerous opponent in front of him in Ilia Topuria, and I also think that Islam leaving could also be an open lane for Topuria to make history and become a two-division champion. I think that Oliveira is a more winnable fight for Ilia than Islam was, and I think Ilia, though dangerous, is a more winnable fight for Oliveira than a Makhachev rematch would have been, and that's what makes this fight so exciting. It feels like the outcome either way is less guaranteed than if either of these guys were fighting Islam. Kind of gives the lightweight division some room to breathe, makes things interesting, but that's not all. The co-main event, flyweight championship on the line, Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja versus Kai Don't Blink Car France, and in the lightweight division, Beneil Dariush versus Renato Money Moicano, and another flyweight bout that could have heavy title fight implications on it. Brandon Raw Dog Royval versus Joshua Van. And to kick off the main card, we got Payton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Two bantamweight prospects, two very dangerous fighters. Both guys are dangerous on the feet. Both guys have power. They can knock people out. But Felipe Lima, I feel like where he might have the advantage is his offensive grappling. And grappling is how Payton Talbot lost his last fight to Raoni Barcelos, where he got humbled. Now, Payton Talbot has had a lot of time since that fight to improve in that area of his game. And if he's able to defend takedowns of Felipe Lima, I could see him winning a striking match. This is a very, very close fight on paper that really could go either way. But Felipe Lima has a lot of momentum right now. He's the favorite for a reason. He's riding a 13-fight win streak. He's 2-0 in the UFC. And I do feel like his grappling advantage is going to serve him well. And I think if he leans to that path, which is the path of least resistance, I do think that he should be able to win this fight. So I am going to pick Felipe Lima, and I could be wrong. I'm not counting out Payton Talbot. Like I said, it is a very, very close fight. But I think Lima is the safer bet. And I'm going to say Felipe Lima wins this fight by decision. Now, we got the flyweight bout between Brandon Raw Dog Royval and Joshua Van. This is going to be an absolute scrap. Joshua Van taking this fight on short notice, doing a quick turnaround. He just fought at UFC 316. He's getting this opportunity because Manal Cop pulled out. And this is a chance for Joshua Van to realize his full potential and become the number one contender in the flyweight division and potentially fight for the title this year. But he's got an uphill battle to climb against Brandon Raw Dog Royval. Brandon Royval has more experience. He's fought better competition. And he may be a gatekeeper, but he is a really good gatekeeper. Like, he keeps turning back guys in the rankings who are climbing up, trying to make a name off him. He beat Tatsuro Taira, who the UFC tried to use to get rid of Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval said, "Nuh-uh, I'm right here at the top. I'm not going anywhere." He beat Brandon Moreno, which is very impressive. And he actually beat Moreno to become the number one contender. And he's won so many fights outside of fighting Alexandre Pantoja. And of course, that first fight with Moreno. Like, I think those are like his only losses in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, to Pantoja twice, and then that one freak injury against Brandon Moreno, which was like a long time ago, but Royval has made a lot of improvements. Royval is more gritty than anyone Van has ever fought before. And I think he's a better striker than anyone Van has ever fought before. Now, look, Joshua Van is a very talented striker, and he's very dangerous. But I don't think he smokes Brandon Royval on the feet. And Brandon Royval is very tricky, very unorthodox, and he brings something to the table striking wise that Van has not seen before. And Brandon Royval also has a height and reach advantage, which I think is going to help him by a lot. I don't see Joshua Van stopping Brandon Royval. And if he doesn't knock him out, I think winning a decision against a guy like Royval is going to be very tough. So I think Brandon Royval is going to win this fight. He is the second best flyweight in the world outside of Alexandre Pantoja. And I think it's going to show. I think Van's going to show potential. I think he gives a good showing, but I think Royval, he's not giving up his number one spot that easily. And I'm going to say that Brandon Royval wins a 29-28 decision in a very fun scrap, a very competitive fight. It could be a fight of the night. We'll find out. And now the feature fight of this card, Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. Look, man, originally I was picking Renato Moicano to win this fight when it was initially booked, when they were supposed to fight at UFC 311. I was riding that hype that Renato had. You know, he was on that win streak, beating everybody, and Beneil Dariush is washed up, hasn't fought in like 2 years, coming off 2 knockout losses. So it felt easy to just ride the hype, ride the recency bias, and just go with Renato Moicano. But ever since UFC 311, when, you know, this fight fell through because Renato had to step in on short notice to fight Islam because Arman pulled out, and then Renato lost to Islam, I had time to just kind of rethink, reassess this matchup, and in thinking back, honestly, I think Beneil Dariush is actually going to beat Renato Moicano. And I don't care that Beneil Dariush hasn't fought in a while. I don't care if he's on a 2-fight losing streak. I think stylistically, Beneil Dariush is a bad matchup for Renato Moicano. And if Beneil is at his best, he beats Renato Moicano any given day. And here's why I think this. Renato Moicano, how he beats people is by out-grappling them, getting takedowns, working ground and pound, and getting ground and pound stoppages or getting a submission, right? Or just laying and preying on his opponents until the final bell and winning by decision. But how has Beneil Dariush lost his last 2 fights? He lost by getting chinned by guys like Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira. That's not how Renato Moicano beats people, and I don't see him going out there and chinning Beneil Dariush, and I don't see him going out there and out grappling Beneil Dariush either. Beneil Dariush is not Drew Dober, he's not Jalen Turner, he's not Brad Riddell, okay? He's not Benoit Saint-Denis. He is a better grappler than all of those guys. He's got a better ground game than all of those guys. His take down the fence is better than all of those guys. He scrambles better than anyone else Renato Moicano has ever fought before, okay? So I think the grappling, it does cancel each other out, but on the feet, I don't think Renato Moicano is really that much of a better striker than Beneil, if at all, really. I think Beneil Dariush is very underrated on the feet. And if Renato Moicano isn't chinning this guy, I don't see him just going out there and piecing up Beneil Dariush and just outpointing him in a striking match. I don't see that happening. I think Beneil Dariush is going to go out there and he's going to outstrike Renato Moicano, and he's going to beat Renato Moicano by decision. I don't think his chin is going to be a factor in this fight. He's had enough time off. He's had enough time to heal physically, mentally, spiritually. And I think we're going to see a refreshed, a rejuvenated, and a dangerous Beneil Dariush. And I think Renato Moicano is going to be on his second straight loss. I just don't think that Renato Moicano is that good, okay? He's good against one-dimensional strikers who can't grapple. Against well-rounded fighters who can grapple like him, like Makhachev, we see what happens. We see how he falls apart. Even against Rafael dos Anjos. That's another good example. RDA can grapple well and better than Renato Moicano. And because Renato couldn't out-grapple RDA, he had to strike with him, but he couldn't outstrike him, and I think he's going to run into similar issues with Beneil Dariush. So that's going to be my underdog pick of the card here. I think Beneil Dariush is going to be one of the very few underdogs on this pay-per-view that ends up winning. Now, moving on to the co-main event, the flyweight championship of the world, Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja versus Kai Don't Blink Kara-France. Man, I cannot wait for this fight, this rematch. I think Kai Kara-France stylistically will be one of the harder fights that Pantoja has had in his run since that third Brandon Moreno fight. And here's why. Because Kai Kara-France has very good takedown defense. His anti-jiu-jitsu is very good. And I think on the feet, he's better than Pantoja, sharper than Pantoja, and he's got a massive power threat in comparison to a Steve Erceg or a Kai Asakura or even a Brandon Moreno or even a Brandon Royval. I think the last big puncher that Pantoja fought was like Davison Figueiredo like 6 years ago. And he got dropped. Now, he survived. He gutted out the power of Figgy, didn't get knocked out. And that's what Pantoja is known for, having a granite chin. But Pantoja has taken a lot of damage throughout his career. And at some point, the granite, it could crack. And I would not be surprised if Kai Kara-France was the one to break that granite. But on the flip side, Alexandre Pantoja right now has proven to be the best flyweight in the world. He is chasing that GOAT status. He's been a champion for a long time and for a good reason. Now, these two have fought a long time ago on The Ultimate Fighter where Pantoja did beat him by decision, and both guys, they improved by a lot. And now we're seeing these guys fighting in the primes of their careers, you know, at the biggest stage. Where now Kai Kara-France, he's no longer that young kid on tough. He's a veteran and a long-time top 5 staple of this division. And Pantoja is now a long-reigning champion. This is going to be a high-level fight, but it's hard to go against Alexandre Pantoja here, even though I think Kai Kara-France can win. Let's talk about what makes Pantoja as difficult as he is, as dangerous as he is. It's his durability, like I mentioned earlier. But I think right now he is the best pure offensive grappler in the flyweight division. And he can take down anybody at will. He also has some of the slickest back takes in the division. And once he gets to your back, you're in a lot of trouble. Either he's going to rear naked choke you, or he'll just ride you out for the rest of the round and just win that round with control time on your back alone. But on the feet, even though I mentioned Kai Kara-France is a very good striker and on paper a better striker than Pantoja, Pantoja is no slouch on the feet. Even though his punches are very sloppy, he also has power. And his punches are very effective. He's very scrappy. He is not afraid to press forward and throw those wild winging hooks. And even though they lack the technique, they're very damaging. They're very dangerous, and he can hurt guys with those punches. And he could definitely hurt Kai Kara-France on the feet, but his kicks are good. He's got good body kicks, which could disrupt the boxing rhythm of Kai Kara-France. His leg kicks are also very good. So I don't think that Kai Kara-France just straight up has this fight won, even if it's on the feet, because of how smothering Pantoja's pressure is on the feet, and because of how powerful he is, and because his striking, I do believe, is above average. I do think that the striking is competitive, but I think the grappling, that's Pantoja all day. I just think that if Kai Kara-France can, like, keep this fight standing long enough and can avoid getting his back taken, can keep this fight on the feet, get those underhooks whenever Pantoja's shooting on him, and can shuck him off, keep it in the center of the octagon, I do think striking with Pantoja won't be without struggle, but I do think eventually Kai Kara-France can slow things down, get in his rhythm, land the shots that he needs to, and just piece Alexandre Pantoja up, kind of like what Brandon Moreno was doing. But I just don't know if Kai Kara-France is going to be able to consistently hold off the takedowns of Pantoja. Pantoja, he's just so tough, so gritty, so relentless with his pressure, so relentless with his takedowns. He's beaten Kai Kara-France before. Look, I'm rooting for Kai Kara-France to win this fight. I want to see the underdog win. I want to see Kai pull through for his boys, Dan Hooker, Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya. It would be dope to see Kai Kara-France win this fight, but I'm gonna have to go with the Cannibal to make his fourth straight defense of his flyweight championship. I do think Kai is gonna do very well. I think he'll do a lot of damage, and I won't even be surprised if he drops Pantoja. But Pantoja, he's got good recovery, even if he does get dropped. And I don't know, I just think his toughness, his pressure, and his grappling eventually is going to overwhelm Kai Kara-France. I think he's just going to drown him. I think what I think will happen is Pantoja is going to win the first round through his pressure. He'll walk down Kai Kara-France. They're both going to swing back and forth, but Pantoja is going to be tagging him. He's going to do a lot of damage, and then he's going to get to the back of Kai Kara-France. And I think Kai Kara-France is going to survive Pantoja being on his back, but he's going to lose that round from being controlled. Then I think round two, I think Pantoja might slow down a little bit, and I think Kai Kara-France might start, swaying the momentum, taking control of the stand-up, defending takedowns of Pantoja. But Pantoja is a zombie, and I think that going into the third round, I think that Pantoja is going to catch a second wind, and I think Kai Kara-France is going to slow down ever so slightly from not being able to finish Pantoja, from putting everything into those punches, not being able to finish him, having to work hard to defend those takedowns, fighting at that intense pace that Pantoja pushes, and then I think Pantoja is going to submit him. And the submission that I visualize in this fight, I could see a rear naked choke similar to the Kaya Zakura fight, but I see Pantoja getting an arm triangle choke submission. I think he's going to take down Kai Kara-France. He's going to be in the half guard. Then he's going to land in full mount. But then he's going to be in like that arm triangle position. Then he's going to pass guard into side control. The commentators are going to go crazy. And then I think Kai Kara-France is going to tap. So my pick is Pantoja, round 3 submission, and he just continues to win, gets his second win over Kai Kara-France and his 4th title defense. But do not sleep on Kai Kara-France. I think he has a very good chance to win. I mean, he had a better performance against Steve Erceg than Pantoja did. Pantoja went life or death with Steve Erceg, took him to a decision. Kai Kara-France knocked him out in the first round, but MMA math, that means nothing. And Pantoja is just next level. And he's going to be very hard for anyone to beat. So that's my pick, Pantoja, round 3 sub. I could also see a decision as well, a close decision, maybe 48-47, maybe Kai survives, but yeah, gotta go with Pantoja and still. Now, the main event of the evening. Ilia El Matador Topuria, Ilia Abtora Topturo, as Conor McGregor likes to call him, versus Charlie's from New Bronx, Charles Oliveira. This is such a good fight, man. And anything can happen in this fight as well. Like I said, Makhachev is out of the picture. Either way, this fight is not unwinnable for either guy. But this fight is also extremely dangerous for both parties. And a lot of people are heavily sleeping on Charles Oliveira. A lot of people are assuming that it is a foregone conclusion that Do Bronx is just going to get steamrolled and flatlined in this fight. And look, I could see why, because Topuria is on quite the run. Okay, he's undefeated. He just knocked out Volkanovski and Max Holloway, and he chinned Holloway, okay? Let that sink in. No one has ever put Max Holloway to sleep like that, ever. And Oliveira, we've seen him in trouble. We've seen him get clipped by almost every single power puncher he's been in there against Chandler twice, against Dustin Poirier, against Justin Gaethje, and now he's up there against one of the sharpest, most dangerous boxers in the UFC, in Ilia Topuria. And Ilia Topuria is also no slouch on the ground. Like, I know Charles Oliveira is the jiu-jitsu specialist of this matchup. That's what he's known for, is his elite level Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I think he has like the most submission wins in UFC history, or at least in UFC lightweight history, if I'm not mistaken. But I just gotta say something right now. I have a take that might be hot. I kind of feel like the myth that is Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu game has kind of died out. Like, is it just me? Like, against Arman Tsarukyan, couldn't submit him, got controlled on the ground. Arman Tsarukyan survived every submission attempt Oliveira put him in. Oliveira had 5 rounds to submit Michael Chandler in that second fight and could not do it. So I feel like that aura of, oh my gosh, you can't go to the ground with this guy or it's over, I feel like that's kind of died out. And Ilia Topuria has a lot of jiu-jitsu experience. He started off his career as a submission artist. His first 5 to 6 MMA fights were submissions. And then he evolved into a really elite level, high level boxer who just started knocking everyone out. Now, Oliveira, he also evolved his striking too. And I do think the striking between the two is very competitive. I think Oliveira's striking is a little more versatile than Ilia Topuria. I think he's got better kicks than Topuria. But just straight up boxing and fighting in the pocket, Ilia Topuria is just much better than Charles Oliveira. He has very good takedown defense, and I think his defensive jiu-jitsu will hold up even if Charles Oliveira manages to get this fight to the ground. If Ilia gets taken down, I don't see him panicking or losing composure. I think he's going to be very prepared to fight Oliveira on the ground, and I think he'll be able to safely and intelligently find his way back to his feet without running into a submission. And I do think that he's going to be able to defend more takedowns than he gives up takedowns, right? And I think Oliveira's only chance to win this fight is if he can make this a grapple-heavy fest, a grapple-heavy fight. If he can take like a wall and stall, lay and pray approach, kind of like what he did with Michael Chandler, then he could win. Because on the feet, even though I think he will do well against a guy like Ilia Topuria, I don't think that he's going to be safe long enough. unless he goes out there and chins Topuria, which I don't see happening because Ilia Topuria has a good chin. He's got solid defense. He's got a tight guard. He's good at rolling with the punches. I don't see him getting chinned like Gaethje, like Chandler, like Beneil Dariush. That ain't happening. If anyone in this fight is going to get knocked out, it's going to be Charles Oliveira. And the longer they're standing, I think eventually Oliveira is inevitably going to get caught. And that's the thing about Ilia Topuria's fights, is that you can do well against him on the feet. Like Bryce Mitchell was holding his own on the feet. Volkanovski, I believe, was winning that fight from the first round to bits of the second round before he got caught. And then Topuria made his reads, knocked out Volkanovski. Like I said, Mitchell was having success. Then got knocked, or didn't get knocked out, but he got dropped once Topuria figured him out in round 2. And then he submitted him. Jai Herbert dropped Ilia Topuria with a head kick in the first round. Ilia recovered. Ilia got back in the fight, stayed focused, found that opening, put Jai Herbert to sleep. Ilia was in control of the first 2 rounds of the Holloway fight, but Max Holloway was doing really good, and Max is a momentum-based fighter. And it looked like Holloway was gaining momentum late round 2, and it looked like he was going to have a bit of a round 3 comeback and maybe run away with like the last few rounds. But then Topuria, he made his reads, he found that opening, and he put Holloway away. So unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to have to pick against Charles Oliveira here. Look, all the homies love Charles Oliveira. I want Do Bronx to win this fight. I want him to be champion again. But Topuria, he's just too dangerous. He's just too powerful. Oliveira makes way too many mistakes on the feet. And like I said, he gets caught and hurt every time you put him up there against one of these heavy hitters. And if you're getting caught by Gaethje and even the ghost of Michael Chandler in that last fight, washed up, gassed out Chandler, almost finished Oliveira in the 5th round. Imagine a guy like Ilia Topuria. So I think Ilia Topuria, he's going to get that second belt. I think Oliveira is going to give a good showing. Like I said, I think the striking is competitive. He does well. He lands some good shots. I do think that this fight is going to be a high-paced fight. They're both going to land good shots on each other. Oliveira is going to have a lot of good moments. He might bust up Ilia in the bridge of the nose. He might redden up his face like Volk did, like Max did. But it's only a matter of time before Topuria figures Oliveira out. And another issue with Charles Oliveira is he doesn't move his head. His defense is poor, okay? That's also why he gets hurt in fights, because of his lack of defense, because of his lack of head movement. And if you make a mistake like that against a guy like Topuria, if you're that open and that vulnerable against Topuria, you're almost guaranteed to get knocked out. So I don't see Oliveira going out there, dominating this fight on the ground. And I just don't see him safely outpointing Ilia Topuria for 5 rounds in a striking match. So I think Topuria wins this fight. I'm going to say he wins by 2nd round knockout. Maybe late round 2, early round 3. But I think Topuria is going to stay undefeated and win the 2nd belt. And I'm not saying Oliveira doesn't have a chance. Topuria is pretty cocky. He is pretty overconfident. And Oliveira is very dangerous, striking-wise, with his power, with his submission game. But Ilia Topuria is just that next level. And I just think that legend killing spree, that fan favorite killing spree, is going to continue. And if you can knock out a guy like Holloway, who had that aura of immortality in his chin, you can knock out a guy like Oliveira, who's known to be very chinny. So Ilia's my pick. But let's see what happens. I'm excited to find out who's going to walk away the lightweight champion. Really hyped for this card. Let me know your picks in the comment section down below. Who do you guys see walking away with the lightweight title? Ilia Topuria or Charles Oliveira? Like and subscribe, and peace out.